Okay, so we're talking today about how to administer the Phonological Awareness Screening Test, or the PASS test, by David Kilpatrick. You can find this for free at thepasstest.com, and it has the actual test itself, which is this, instructions on how to administer it, and as well as a few other resources. You can also find the information and even a lot more information in his book, Essentials of Reading Success, and that's again by David Kilpatrick. So, this is what the PASS test looks like. There is a Form A, Form B, and Form C, and you only administer one of those at a time. So, Form A, I would do maybe at the beginning of the year, and then if I wanted to check my students' progress mid-year or semester, I might give them Form B, which same idea, just different words. And then at the end of the school year, I might do a third time, and that would be Form C. So it's just meant to be administered one at a time. On that passtest.com, you can get all four Forms A, B, C, and D. You also get the instructions, which I'm just going to go over the highlights of, and more in depth for sure. If you get them yourselves, I would look through them. In fact, David Kilpatrick has in bold twice on this first page, don't administer this until you read the instructions. So this is just an overall all the highlights. It's not the in-depth instructions. So also, I think just equally as important, you need to practice giving the test. It's an extremely difficult test to give. Not extremely, but it is difficult. It's not a straightforward, let's sit down, I can read over it for 3 minutes and administer it. It's a little unique and a little different in some ways. So definitely practice with your spouse, your mate, your kids, your grandma, whoever you can get to sit down with you. This is an excerpt from chapter 11. Again, all of this comes from thepasstest.com as well. So general instructions for administering. First of all, and this is hugely important as educators, we need to do this anyway, but when we're administering this, we need to make sure we're saying our phonemes or our speech sounds in isolation correctly. So if I see this right here, that letter, and I want to say the sound or the phoneme associated with that letter, it would be P. It's not P, it's P. And it's very important, as educators, that we know how to do that correctly, but we teach our students how to do that correctly. So it does not have any practice items. Oh, by the way, in chapter 12, and I'll try to do a video of how to pronounce the speech sounds or phonemes correctly. There are no practice items. And then if you notice here, that letter A has brackets on either side of it. The letter I has brackets. When you see that, or if it has it in parentheses, so either the brackets or the parentheses indicate that you're supposed to say the speech sound. So if I see that, I would say change a to I. I'm choosing I have to say the speech sounds associated with that letter, not the letter. I do not say change A to I. I say change a to I. And again, in the test itself, he has it in parentheses. So either one of those, you're going to say the speech sound or the phoneme, not the name of the letter. Now, that's for the short vowel sounds. If he wants you to say the long vowel sound, he will have a capital A in either brackets or in parentheses. So when I see the lowercase a in brackets or parentheses, I say a. When I see an uppercase A in brackets or parentheses, I would say A. Okay, this is page 95 on the instructions from thepasstest.com. I'm going to do this, explain this by using this. Okay, so on the passtest.com, it has 3 ways that you can score an item. They can be scored as incorrect, pretty straightforward. They can be scored as correct but not automatic, or correct and automatic. So I'm just going to go to this to kind of explain it to you. So this in bold is what I'm going to say to my student, and these are the items that I'm going to give. So, for example, if I would say bookcase. They say bookcase. Now say bookcase, but don't say book. Case. Now they answered it correctly. It was within less than 2 seconds. And so I'm going to score that as automatic. So yeah, they got it correct, but they also got it within less than 2 seconds or less. And I didn't have to repeat the item. So I do an X to indicate that it was, correct and automatic. Then if I said say sunset, they say sunset. Now say sunset, but don't say sun. Set. Now they answered it correctly, but it took them more than 2 seconds, so I would put it as a 1 to indicate, yep, it's correct. It was just took longer than 2 seconds. Let's do another one. Say spaceship, spaceship. Now say spaceship, but don't say ship. What was that again? I would repeat it. Say spaceship, spaceship. Now say spaceship, but don't say ship. Space. They got it correct, but I had to repeat it, so it does not get scored as automatic. It just gets scored as correct. Say silver, silver. Now say silver, but don't say sill. Silver. They got it incorrect, so I'm going to score that with a 0. Okay. Now later we'll talk about there's an extra step. You do some feedback with it if they get it incorrect. We won't talk about that now because we're just talking about how to score it. So automatic, correct within less than 2 seconds, did not need to be repeated. Correct, but not automatic because they took longer than 2 seconds. Correct, but not automatic because I had to repeat the question. And straight up incorrect. So those are 3 different ways, automatic, correct, or incorrect, that you do that. That's what this is talking about. You might pause it and read it. He also talks about if they just don't respond for 5 seconds, you repeat it, give them a chance to respond. But again, since I repeated it, if they got it correct, it would not be automatic. So providing feedback, I kind of touched on that a second ago. When the student got it incorrect, then you score it as a 0, but then you're also supposed to give them feedback. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so the bold is what you're going to say to them. Say bookcase, now say bookcase, but don't say book. If they get it correct, let's say they got all 6 of these items correct, I would never use the feedback. You only say the feedback if they get one incorrect. So earlier I said say silver. They said silver. Now say silver, but don't say sill. You're going to leave out whatever's in the parentheses. And they said silver. So they got it incorrect. I score it incorrect. And then I have to give them the feedback. If you say silver without saying sill, you get ver. And I move on. Say market, market. Now say market, but don't say mar. Mark. They got it incorrect. If you say market without saying mar, you get kit. And I would count that as incorrect. Say gentle, gentle. Now say gentle, but don't say toll. Gen. They got it correct within 2 seconds, so that would be automatic. So that's what the feedback is. Levels D and E, their feedback is the same for the most part. Obviously different with the different eyes, but when you go levels F through M, it changes just a little bit. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I would say feet, feet. Now say feet, but don't say fee. They got it incorrect. Score it as a 0. If you say feet without the you get eat. Feet, eat. You notice the difference in the feedback levels F through M is I say the original word and I say the correct answer. Okay, so I'm going to do another one. If you say cough, cough. Now say cough, but don't say k. Cough. Incorrect. Count it as 0. If you say cough without the k, you get off. Cough, off. And when I was learning to do this, because it's a lot to juggle at first, I would literally move my finger along with what I said. If you say cough without the k, you get off. Cough, off. So I'm kind of walking myself through it by pointing to what I'm supposed to say. Okay? And let's look at level G, because that feedback looks a little bit different too, because it's a little bit different. So if I said, say guide, guide. Now say guide, but instead of g, say gride. They said it incorrect. I'm going to score it as 0. If you say guide and change the g to you get ride. Guide, ride, and move on. Say more, more. Now say more, but instead of say d, more. Incorrect. So I would write 0. If you say more and change the to d, you get door. More door. So that's what feedback is for. And he talks about feedback in more detail here. When I was again first learning to do this, I went ahead and highlighted the feedback because it just helped me to know exactly where to go when I needed to use it. So he says, do provide feedback, which we just talked about. Don't demonstrate or explain any further. Okay, don't use any visual cues. If they're, especially if they're tentative or unsure, you can say that's right. It's kind of a little different than I'm used to, but that's okay. You do not teach any item or level. You say, okay, now when we do this is what we need to do. We're not teaching it to them. That's the only thing you can give to them is that feedback if they're incorrect. And then never say anything about the position of the sound. That was in the final position, not in the beginning or whatever. Now, this test is not normed, which means, at least not as of my understanding or what they have on their website, as of 2023, in August of 2023. Normed means like they took a lot of, it means like you can compare your students' scores to other students' scores. So if I had a 5th grade student, if a norm test, I would be able to go look and see how does he compare to other 5th grade students. It is standardized in that he does want you to administer it the way it's intended. So that way, if I administer it to Bobby Joe and my friend administers it to Betty Sue, we know we administered the same way. So it is standardized, but it is not normed. So he talks about where do we start the test, and then when do we don't have to do the whole test, but when do we finish the test? Now, I will tell you right now, I 100%, when you're first doing this, I would just start. Everybody has to start with level D1. And if you're looking at the test right here, everyone's going to start here. Say bookcase. Now say bookcase, but don't say book. And then there's D2, E2, E3, etc. So everybody starts at D1. I would go ahead and start with D1 and keep going until you hit that discontinue rule, until you're super solid at it. Because he kind of goes into a lot of detail about, well, if they're in this grade, you can do this and skip that. It just is confusing when you're just trying to learn it. So 100% start at D1, but I would just keep going until you hit that discontinue rule, which we'll talk about in a second, and I would ignore all of this for now. Once you're solid at it, good, then go back and look at that. But that's just going to create a lot of confusion, I think, for most people. So start at D1. When do I finish? Because they don't have to do the whole test. Not every child will do the whole test. In fact, most of them will not. Well, once they can get, how do I say this? If they score correct score on 2 levels in a row, and they only get 0 or 1 or 2 out of those 10 consecutive problems, 10 consecutive items, then you're going to discontinue. Let's talk about what that means. Okay, so by the way, you don't do anything other than X's, O's, and 1's and the feedback until you're at a certain point. After I've completed this test with this kiddo, let's say, I'm going to come back and score it. So remember, the X's mean they got it automatically within 2 seconds or less and without any repetitions, and they got it correct. 1's means they got it correct, but it took longer than 2 seconds, or they had to have it repeated. 0's are incorrect. So when I come over here, D1, I have to see how many of those items in D1 did they get correct. And they got all 3 of them correct. But how many of those were automatic? Just 1 of them. Looking at D2, they only got 1 correct, and that one that they got correct was also automatic. Level E2, they got 2 of those correct, only 1 was automatic. E3, 2 correct, 1 automatic. So I don't know if you noticed, but the screener is divided up into like level 1 is syllable level, theoretically the easiest, not necessarily all the time, but theoretically the easiest to do. Then a little more challenging level 2 is onset and rhyme, which we can talk about in another video if you're not familiar with that, what that means. And then on the back, it's basic phoneme level or advanced phoneme level. So, but it's looking over here in the basic syllable total. I'm going to count up how many they got correct out of D1, D2, E2, E3. And so 4, 6, 8 out of 12 of those were correct. Out of the 8, how many were automatic? Only 4. Okay, so looking here. Now on levels F through M, it's all 5 of them. So how many out of these 5 did they get correct? They got 3 correct. How many were automatic? Just 1 of them. Here they only got 1 correct and 0 automatic. The only one they got correct was not automatic. Going to add up for the onset and rhyme total. They got 4 out of 10 correct. Out of those, only 1 was automatic. Flip it over. Looking at level H, out of those 5 items, they got 1 of them correct, and it was also automatic. Okay. So going back to the discontinue rule, when do I'm done with this student, by the way, and I'll talk about why in a second. I don't have to administer I, J, K, L, or M because they have met the criteria to stop giving the test. And the criteria says if the combined correct score on 2 levels in a row is 0, 1, or 2 out of 10, we're going to stop the test. And all the items beyond that are considered incorrect. So on this one, I look at these. So if I count these 2, F and G, F is they had 3 correct, G they had 1 correct. I add those together, that totals 4. If I had added those together and they added equal 0, 1, or 2, then I would have stopped here. Said, okay, I'm done with the test. So that was not the case. Now I'm looking at G and level H. Level G, they only got 1 correct. Level H, they only got 1 correct. So those 2 combined scores, 1 on level G, 1 on level H, equaled 2. So on those 10 consecutive items, they only got 2 correct. Therefore, I'm done. I'm going to stop testing there. That also means that they will not get any credit for I, J, K, L, or M. None of those do they get any credit for. So that's what he's saying here. That's how you know. So now I'm done scoring. Done giving it, done scoring. What do I do? Well, we've added all the correct and automatics. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 out of those 12. So I'm going to bring these scores that I just did and put them here. So at the basic syllable level, basic syllable total, they got 8 out of 12 correct. I'm going to write 8 out of 12 correct there. How many of those 8 were automatic? Just 4 of them. So I'm going to write my 4 there. Onset and rhyme total is going to go here. Onset rhyme. So they got 4 correct, but only 1 of which was automatic. 4 correct, only 1 of which is automatic. Flip it over. I can't count anything past here as correct because remember that 1 correct on this side, 1 correct on G meant we discontinued the test. So basic phoneme total, they only got 1 correct, and that 1 happened to be automatic. So I come back over here, basic phoneme, 1 correct. It was also automatic, and then I don't have any scores for these. Sorry about that. Our little barking chihuahua wanted to get in on the action, right? Okay, so now I've filled these in, and then over here it wants me to write the highest correct level that they got. Okay, so for levels D, if they got 3 out of 3 correct, that means they passed that level. So I'm going to circle that one. Level D2 only got 1 out of 3. Level E2 and E3, they did not get 3 out of 3. Then when there's 5 of them, they have to get 4 out of 5. Again, this is in the instructions. So I have to look at their correct score. Did they get 4 out of 5 there? Nope. Didn't get 4 out of 5 there. Did not. And did not get 4 out of 5 there. So the highest correct level this student got was level D1. Oops. Then if this does not apply because there's nothing before D1 that they did well on. Same criteria for the highest automatic level. They have to get 3 out of 3 in levels D or E. Did not, did not, did not, did not. So none of those. Have to get 4 out of 5 in the automatic. Also did not do that at all. So I would just put didn't happen. Okay, so that's how you fill this out. Approximate grade level here, pre-K, kinder, etc. Right there. And it kind of tells you right here. Let me pause this again. If you look right here, level D and E2, so levels D through E2, are typically accomplished or mastered with preschool to mid-kindergarten. E3, typically mastered by mid to late kindergarten. So my student, I would put, they're more of a pre-K because they were only able to get level D1. So I would circle pre-KK. That's about where my student is. Again, if you look at the top, my student's in 2nd grade. He's really only able to do things correctly, not even automatically, but only correctly at the pre-K and kindergarten level. So this is in the instructions what I just explained, how to pass a level with automaticity versus correct. Of course, the scoring incorrect, correct but not automatic, and automatic, and then the total score. And then they give you an example of what that might look like. Here is a table. It's showing mid-kindergarten. Typically, achieving readers would be automatic with D1 through E2 and F, and they might sometimes be higher than that. Low achieving readers typically would be more D1, D2, or none correct at all. And late kindergarten, typical readers, struggling readers, or low achieving readers. And then it talks about how if your student is scoring here in the low achieving readers area, then a phonological problem is suggests that phonological awareness may be a concern. If their level is even lower than this, then a phonological awareness problem is very likely. In either case, it shows you do need to work on those specific skills. So now what? Okay, so let's say that with our student, we had them I would have this student begin doing activities at level D1. At level D1, because our goal is to get them automatic. If they had 3 out of 3 automatically, then I could start at level D2 instead. So when the automatic is considered passed, they pass that level. Again, 3 out of 3 if there are 3 items would be meaning they passed that level. Or 4 out of 5 if there's 5 items in there. And they got that in the automatic, then they passed that level. So if this student had gotten 3 out of 3 automatic, I would start on level D2. Since they only got 1 out of 3 automatic, I'm going to start at level D1 because I want them to be automatic before I move on. So, similar here. If they had scored 4 out of 5 automatic on level F, then and they didn't on level G, then I would start on level G. So, in his book, at the back of that Equipped for Reading Success book, and I don't have my book with me, unfortunately, but I would go at the back to level D1, and they would have activities, 10 items these are bookcase, level D1, sunset, spaceship. Those are compound words. So this student is struggling for automaticity at the word level. So there are a whole lot of items. You give 10 at a time where I would do say bookcase, bookcase. Now say bookcase, but don't say book. And I would teach them that, and he kind of gives you how to help them if they're struggling. Become more proficient and more independent and at the automatic level. And then I would do that until they are able to score 90% automatic and with I don't know, I think it was like four, I can't remember the criteria, it's in the book. And once they score automatic a certain score, 90% or better, over a certain number of trials, then I would move to D2 in the book, at the back of the book. And in that one, this is at the syllable level, and it's not compound words, it's just syllables. And then you would have 10 items that you would give, similar to these, and we would do it. It takes about 1 minute to do it. We might do it 2 or 3. Then we might do another one later in the day, and then we might do one before they go home. And once they're proficient at the automatic at that level, then we would move on to E2, which is syllables, but three syllables this time. Okay, so then you essentially work your way through the levels until they are proficient in automatic. And really, your whole goal is to get to the phoneme level, basic phonemes, individual speech sounds. That's where you get your bang for your buck. But we do have to go through the levels first to do that. All right. Again, it's a tricky one to give, but once you get going, it goes quickly. I'm going to have a video where my daughter is going to be a student for me so you can see what it looks like in real time, how I would score it, how I would give the feedback. I will also try to do a video with how to pronounce the phonemes or the speech sounds correctly, so you'll have that for reference.